All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in these proceedings will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and then for the record, can you please give me your first name and your last name and spell them?
Yes, my name is Brenda Reinhard, Brenda Reinhard.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kodiaga?
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Reinhard, what do you do for a living?
I am a criminalist at the Iowa DCI Crime Laboratory in Ankeny.
And how long have you worked with the DCI Crime Lab?
I've worked with DCI since 2015, so about 10 years.
What do you do at the crime lab?
I work primarily in the biology DNA section of the lab, so I examine evidence that's brought into the lab, and I may, depending on the case, look for the presence of any bodily fluids that might be present, and then I will take samples of those items and attempt to obtain any DNA profiles that can then be compared to any known samples to see if they can either be included or excluded as a contributor.
Will you briefly summarize for the jury your education and your specialized training to be a DNA analyst?
Yes, so I have a bachelor's degree in biology and a bachelor's degree in forensic science from Columbia College in Missouri, and I have a master's degree in forensic science from the University of New Haven in Connecticut. Additional training that I had was after I graduated, I received a criminalist position at the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department Crime Lab in 2011, and I went through about a 9-month training under 2 court-qualified analysts. That also included numerous literature readings as well as some outside trainings that I'm required to do. And then I had to take both written and oral exams as well as a competency test to be signed off to do casework independently. And then when I received the job in Ankeny, I went through about a 3-month training under the DNA technical leader, and same test and oral exams and a competency to be signed off. And I'm also proficiency tested by an outside agency twice a year.
As part of your duties, have you performed various DNA analyses over the years?
Yes, I have.
Does that go into hundreds?
Thousands, yeah.
Can you briefly tell this jury what DNA is and just go through the process of what DNA and what it entails?
So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the chemical blueprint that makes all of us unique as individuals, with the exception of identical twins. We receive half from our mother and half from our father, and it can be found in blood, seminal fluid, saliva, or epithelial cells, which are skin cells.
So in other words, we sometimes shed DNA when we're sitting, when we're talking, when we are touching things?
Yes.
Were you assigned to examine some items that your lab received that relate to this case that brings us to this courtroom today?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember the items that you were able to examine?
Yes, there was actually numerous items. If you don't mind if I refer to my report.
Yeah, with the court's permission, you can use your report to refresh your memory.
Any issue?
No.
All right, go ahead.
Did you just want me to list all of the items I examined or looked at, or?
Let's start with the first section of what you received and what you identified them as. And I'm going to ask you to just slow down so that the court reporter can catch everything you're saying. So from the first part or the first, what I'll call paragraph of your report.
Of the report, sorry, just so I clarify, of all the items submitted or the items that were examined?
Let's talk about the items what items were submitted?
Okay, sorry. The items that were submitted were, there were swabs of a stain from the sewing room floor, swabs from the living room floor, swabs from the outside landing of the living room door, swabs of stains from the cement and railing on the first step up outside the living room door, swabs of stains on the exterior of the living room door, swabs of a stain from the red Ford steering wheel, swabs from the Ford truck driver's door handle, swabs of the red Ford truck steering wheel. I had a bloodstain card from Ryan Cooper, as well as left-hand fingernail clippings and right-hand fingernail clippings and pulled head hair of Ryan Cooper, as well as a t-shirt from Ryan Cooper. There was also an interior doorknob from the crime scene. There were 6 swab boxes that were collected from the door handle area, a gray t-shirt, a pair of black Old Navy shorts, and muck boots from the mudroom entry. And then I had known buccal swabs. That's like the inside swab of an individual's cheek. So known samples from Cade Cooper, Cable Cooper, Karina Cooper, and Cortland Cooper.
What is the purpose of these buccal swabs? What will you do with them?
If a DNA profile is developed from any of the items of evidence, then that profile can then be compared to any known samples brought into the lab. So then we can tell if that person is either included or maybe excluded as a contributor.
When you talk about DNA profile, what do you mean by that?
It is just a numerical representation of an individual's DNA. Like I said before, all of our DNA is unique with the exception of identical twins, and we look at 21 different unique locations on an individual's DNA.
In the line of your, in your job, do you find there are misconceptions from the public that DNA is always found on a scene of a crime?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury why that's a misconception or why sometimes DNA is not found?
Yes, so sometimes, I guess the most DNA that we get from, the reason why we take buccal swabs, like the inside of someone's cheek, or we get a known sample from blood, for example, it's a rich source of DNA. So we should most likely get a DNA profile from those type of items, depending on how much is present. And then the other items would be touch DNA. So even if I just touched this table and I swabbed it, I may or may not find that my DNA is there. It can depend on numerous factors. So how long I touched it, if I rubbed it or had any force against it, if it was a smooth surface versus a rough surface, and depending on time, how long DNA's been there, if it's been outside, or something like that, it can be degraded by certain factors. Those kind of things.
So from your example of touching that table, does failing to find DNA from you touching that table prove that you never touched the table?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Does failing to find DNA prove that that never happened, or it just sometimes shows that there was no DNA to be found?
It just shows that there was no DNA found or not enough present for me to even compare to anyone's DNA.
Can you briefly explain how you perform your DNA analysis?
Yes, so depending on the type of case and what I'm looking for, I will screen for the presence of bodily fluids. If that's the case, I'll take a cutting or sample from that item. I will place that into a tube and then add some chemicals to break open those cells to release that DNA if there's any present. I will then quantify it to see how much DNA is there, and then I will amplify it or make millions of copies of it so that it can be read on an instrument that will give me a DNA profile. That DNA profile can then be compared to those known samples.
Were you able to develop a DNA profile, therefore, of Ryan Cooper?
Of his known bloodstain card, yes.
Okay. And you also indicated you are able to develop a DNA profile for the family members who you're given their DNA, correct?
Yes.
Now, you talked about some items that you received and that you were able to swab or were swabbed for DNA and you're able to test. Can you tell us, starting from item 8 through item 12, what examinations you performed and what was the results of those examinations?
Yes, so for items 8 through 12, no examinations were performed on the swabs at that time.
What about item number 13?
Item 13, screening did not indicate the presence of blood on the swabs of the red stain on the steering wheel, and so no DNA testing was attempted.
Can you just explain what that means? Maybe in layman terms, just break it a little down.
Yes, so the swabs I received, if they are red in color, I will screen them for the presence of blood. We use 2 color changing tests. So all I'll do is take 2 swabs, I will moisten them with water, and then I will swab the actual red stained swabs, and then I will add the chemicals, each chemical to those swabs. In the presence of blood, one will turn a bright pink color, and the other will turn like a bluish green color in the presence of blood. If I don't get that color change, then that does not indicate the presence of blood.
So whatever looked like blood maybe turned out not to be what you thought about it being blood. Fair enough.
Yeah, there's lots of red substances that can look like blood.
Okay, so on a farm truck that's used in the farm, there could always be something that someone touched it with earlier on that looks like blood, but upon further testing, your lab was able to say it's not, there's no presence of blood in it.
Correct. We get even stuff from paint or stains on some items of clothing that look a lot like blood, or even ketchup. So.
What about, so we talked about that was item number 14.
That was 13.
That was 13. What about item number 14?
Item 14, no DNA profile was developed from the swabs from the driver's door handle.
Okay. What about number 15?
The DNA profile developed from the swabs of the steering wheel indicated a mixture of at least 2 individuals. That was too weak for conclusive interpretation.
Again, can you explain that in more layman terms?
Yes, so I could tell that there were 2 individuals present on that item. However, it was just too weak, or just too little DNA there to even be compared to any known samples.
The fingernail clippings, head hair, and the T-shirt that Ryan Cooper was wearing, again, those were not tested for DNA.
Correct.
Sometimes as you test these, do you use common sense and decide some things don't need to be tested because you know what DNA will be on them? Is that why?
Sometimes that's the case on some items, or sometimes we only have, so when we're given evidence at the beginning, we do limit the number of items that are tested right off the first submission, and then they can be tested later, at a later date if needed.
There was a match that when we talk about later items that you tested, the interior screen doorknob, did you test that?
The interior?
The doorknob, did you test the doorknob? That's item 25.
Item 25.
Yeah.
On the doorknob, I did look at the doorknob. Previously, before I looked at it, on this doorknob, excuse me, there was an LP, or latent print examination assignment, as well as a DNA assignment on that doorknob. And so I did look at it, and I decided that it was a smooth surface. And so a lot of times we do bring down the LP examiner to come and look at it with us, and sometimes we'll do both. So I'll usually take the rough surfaces, and the LP examiner will take these smooth surfaces. Since this was all smooth, we decided to just go with, I called the agent to see what assignment he would rather do, and they chose to do LP on that one.
Are you less likely to find DNA on smooth surfaces?
Sometimes, most of the time, and then on doorknobs, a lot of times we will get mixtures or too weak, because a lot of people touch doorknobs. So prints are usually a better way of getting those better results.
Did you examine what you marked as item 26?
Yes, I did.
And those are the ones we've talked about?
Yes, those are swabs from door handle, I believe. From the door handle area.
You also had a report which you labeled as report number 10.
Yes, I did.
can you tell us the item or items you examined under the report that you labeled as report number 10?
Yes, number 10, I looked at swabs from the cement and railing on the first step up outside the living room door.
And what were you testing in this item number 10?
I screened the items for the presence of blood, and screening indicated the presence of blood on those swabs. And the DNA profile developed from those swabs matched the known DNA profile of Ryan Cooper. The probability of finding this profile in a population of unrelated individuals chosen at random would be less than 1 out of 30 decillion.
So basically what you're saying is that there's less people in the world compared to the person who matched this blood. It was Ryan Cooper's blood. Fair enough?
Yes, I believe the world population is about 8 billion.
And just to recap from what you've said, to be clear with the jury, the absence of DNA evidence does not mean that someone wasn't there or someone did not touch something. It just means that sometimes DNA evidence can be unavailable, correct?
Correct. Just for an example, I do train some new analysts that come into the lab, so we try to do some fake evidence items. So for instance, I'll take a knife and maybe hold it in my hand for a little bit, and then I will put it into that evidence item. We'll swab it, and a lot of times we'll get a weak profile or nothing at all. So it just depends how the item is handled or if it's been wiped off. Somebody could be using gloves at the time, so without that touching that surface, there could be no DNA present because of that as well.
I have no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Watt, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. So you were mentioning how you had to make a decision whether to do the latent print processing or the DNA on the doorknob.
Yes.
Is that because you can't do both in the same area?
So if I did DNA on it, I would essentially take swabs of the entire item. And so that would, in essence, ruin any fingerprints that might have been left behind. And then if LP does their examination, they do some chemical processing to it that can ruin the DNA. So you kind of have to choose when it's just solely a smooth surface. But then when there's a rough surface and a smooth surface, I will take the rough areas and then leave the smooth areas for them.
Okay, and so like if you had a bigger object, you could limit, you could take half of the piece and he could take the other half. This is just small, what we have.
Absolutely. Yeah, depending on what you can do, yeah.
And this pertained to both, what I'm understanding is that there are two actual knobs. It's just both sides of the door.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I'd have to refer to my notes on that one, but yes.
And then a quick question about the blood outside. So I understand that they took swabs of, so we saw a picture with a bunch of different stains, red stains on those stairs. So did they swab all of those stains and then submit that to you as one item, or did they just choose one?
I did not look at the crime scene photos, but normally it's of just one item. So in particular, this one does say placard 8. So I would assume that they took just a swab of that placard 8 item, whatever they would have considered placard 8.
Okay. So, but obviously for each stain of blood that we see somewhere, that doesn't necessarily, just because this stain here is Ryan Cooper, that doesn't mean that the stain next to it is also Ryan Cooper.
That could be possible, yeah.
But then I also assume if they were to mix two, like if they were to take one Q-tip and swab two different stains, it wouldn't be coming back as Ryan Cooper when you're doing a DNA testing if there was a mix.
If there was a mixture of two people, one was one person, one was the other, yes, I would expect to see a mixture of two DNA, and yeah, I would see two people instead of one.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
I have no questions.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
You're excused. And ladies and gentlemen, rather than start another witness, we're pretty close to our midpoint for the afternoon, so we'll take a 15-minute break. And again, I'd remind you of the admonition that I gave you previously.